ThaBoxingvoice.com.
What broke him down? Was it just the body punches? When I was hitting him with body punches, and I heard him, actually, he was crying in there. You're saying that Biggs was crying when you hit him? Yes. When did that happen? And perhaps the fourth round on.
ThaBoxingvoice.com.
So that you knew you had him by that time. Absolutely, but I knew he was tough and they're taking those punches.
ThaBoxingvoice Productions.
Making women gestures like,
ThaBoxingvoice Productions.
This is a beautiful performance against a very tough guy in Michael Johnson. How do you feel about it?
Fuck that. Conor McGregor.
ThaBoxingvoice.com.
You know me, Larry. From a wicked entrance, from a flip over the rope into a knockout now. When the main thing is, I just hope the guy, I wish.
ThaBoxingvoice.com.
Yes, it's the Hipster. Haters beware. It's been, just an average Sunday. No flagship show. That is weird. That is not normal, to say the least. But we're here. I wanted to give at least you guys, the Patreon family, some sort of content today because you guys expect it. You guys expect Thursdays and Sunday shows at the bare minimum of us at this point. So thought I'd at least give you guys some content, especially since I obviously messed up on Friday and did not do the standing 8 count that I should have done on that day. But don't worry, guys. We can just forget about that. Get hyped. For all the people that hate sound bites, ha.
Stay in your lane.
Because,
OMG. I am so excited.
It's standing 8 counting. I'm running solo dolo. No Ness. No Robbie. Get out here, Rob. One-liner. No Doomy. No Enrique. Just me. Definitely going to give my take, review of this weekend's action from Lee Selby versus Josh Warrington all the way to Adonis Stevenson versus Badou Jack. I've watched all the fights again, rescored them, etc. And I think all the fights were pretty good. I know Ness obviously much more, was negative, especially about the Gary Russell fight, especially. So much so that, Rob, who obviously was asleep during the time of the fights, was, basically dismissive of the fight entirely and saying that he didn't want to watch it purely because of our live fight chat. I think that's definitely not accurate to what that fight was, but obviously we're going to get there, work our way from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, and then obviously to you guys' topics and questions after that. All the topics that you guys posted on the Patreon post, what was it, Friday? That will be discussed. All those topics, all those questions will be discussed after reviewing all of this weekend's action that I assume you guys want to hear first, obviously from me. Definitely leave a comment either in the live fight chat or in that original Patreon post on Friday, standing 8 counts topics, I believe is what it was titled, if you want to get your topic or question answered directly on the show, guaranteed. But let's digress. Shout out to TBV Bingo, which definitely should be a thing. But we're going to hop right into basically this weekend's matchups. And Lee Selby and Josh Warrington, to me, was the fight of the weekend. It stole the day before the night even began for us over here in the U.S. 20+ thousand in the, I forget the name of the arena, it's like EDDELL, something like that. Shout out to Air Cruz in the chat. Thank you. Saying what's happening, Matt. Nothing much, just discussing obviously this weekend's fights and obviously you guys' questions and topics on the Patreon topic post that was posted on Friday. Digressing to Lee Selby versus Josh Warrington, I think I should have went with my gut. I should have went with what was apparent in the last 12 to 18 months, is that Josh Warrington is a bruiser, and Lee Selby ain't that great. Lee Selby is not a guy that's going to come over here and, outclass people. Even when he was doing well, in his run, so to speak, as a champion and being active, and he was never that great against, to be honest, mediocre competition at the highest level. I mean, you talk about. He does have top 15 and arguably top 10 wins. Don't get me wrong, but guys like Ivani Gradovic and Jonathan Baus, I mean, they're not something to write home about and think that, oh, this guy's elite. This guy's one of the top 3 in the division. You can't hold your hat on those wins. Even Valdez in a very close and controversial win over Scott Quigg, that means more. Scott Quigg's name means more, but getting back to the fight, I think Josh Warrington just bruised him up and just didn't respect Lee Selby, as he shouldn't have. Lee Selby's never been known to be a power puncher, never been known to really hurt guys. Been known to take pressure, I think, poorly at times. And Josh Warrington's entire game plan and MO is pressure, is heavy hooks, which we obviously saw in the matchup. I scored an 8-4 for Josh Warrington. I thought he just clearly won. Lee Selby, even though he was competitive in the round he lost, I think was just getting beat up and bruised up by the heavier, harder hitter in Josh Warrington. And I mean, kudos to obviously and the new for Joshy, and definitely gonna be interesting to see where he goes next. Obviously, it was talked about with Carl Frampton being the next matchup. I think he probably wins that fight. I might pick him. He may not be the favorite for the bookies, or he might might be very close, even money potentially. But in my opinion, Josh Warrington proved that he absolutely belonged at this level. And I could see him in fights with Oscar Valdez, giving him a good shot. I think the Gary Russells of the world and the Leos of the world, and even maybe an Abner Mares, could potentially outbox him and negate that pressure. But, I mean, we have a new player on the scene in the UK and overall in the world at 126. So shout out to Josh Warrington. Heading over to the US, give a little, here we go. Gary Russell Jr., obviously, to me, impressed. I know it may not look that way, but his 8-4, because I scored an 8-4 for Gary Russell, was much more dominant, in my opinion, than Josh Warrington's. I mean, yes, Jojo Diaz had spots of success. He obviously won 4 rounds on my scorecard. But, I mean, Gary Russell just outworked him, and he did so at a higher level, higher skill level, higher technical level than a Josh Warrington did, let's say, against Lee Selby. While Josh Warrington's game was built on pressure, volume, brutality in a sense, hard shots. Gary Russell's was more about volume and just quickness, darting in and out. And he did that exceptionally well, kept the jab up. Joseph Diaz had a non-existent jab. I watched that fight 3 times. The first time, obviously, live. Second time, I wanted all the commentary and all that stuff. I paid super close attention to it. Third time, kind of in and out. And to me, it became very apparent when I was just watching in and out that, Joseph Diaz just wasn't doing anything. He had spots, yes, but every time you look back at the TV, it was Gary Russell Jr. jabbing him and throwing combinations consistently. I don't know what this means for Gary Russell moving forward, because he didn't Lubin Joseph Diaz. When we saw Jamel Charlo ice Erickson Lubin, a highly touted prospect that was on a knockout streak in 1 round, it immediately sent Jamel Charlo in a different stratosphere for what we thought he was and what we think he is. Gary Russell didn't get that. Gary Russell got a competitive but still I'm going to say boxing clinic. Those are all hyperbolic words to say. But definitely he was the dominant winner, in my opinion. But it was so competitive in spots. And the power of Joseph Diaz, a guy that we all know doesn't have power, seemed to affect Gary Russell. So just interesting things to make note of. A guy like Leo with the volume, the height, the reach. Leo, I think, having more traditional, in terms of power, a higher knockout ratio than a Joseph Diaz, that presents an issue. Oscar Valdez presents an issue for Gary Russell. I still think Gary Russell might beat everyone in this division, but his claim to the top, however loose it was, I sort of gave it to him for a period of time. And I don't think he has that anymore. There's enough people on the scene right now that I don't know. There's a guy like Josh Warrington whose pressure and volume and hard shots, I mean, completely negate what Gary Russell does. Does that make Gary Russell show up? Or is Gary Russell a class above? I don't know. I don't know anymore. But very interesting to see, these two fights in the same division and how they played out. Going over to the main event, Adonis Stevenson versus Badou Jack. I scored this one for Adonis Stevenson, 7-5. I don't know. I think it's one of those when I watched it on the replay, I was more entertained by the fight, but less impressed by Adonis Stevenson, way more impressed by Badou Jack. It was just a lot of my perceptions of the fight live kind of changed. My thought of Badou Jack being this overtly nervous and anxious, almost mess in the first 7 rounds, that kind of went away a little bit upon rewatch and sort of knowing the full story of the event and of the fight. But obviously there was spots of that, like he's shelling up kind of weird, bouncing kind of weird. But Badou Jack to me looked a lot more comfortable upon the replay and knowing that he eventually obviously gets back in there. I don't know if that's obviously just because I knew the ending, and I knew that this jumpy Badou Jack doesn't get knocked out in under 6 rounds. But still, I still think Adonis edged it out. I still think he outworked him. I still think, not necessarily outworked him, but he just won more rounds. It was that simple. Round 10 was close. Round 10 is that swing round where even though Adonis had the crippling body shot in the last minute, the first 2 minutes of that round was Badou Jack winning. And winning not impressively, but clearly. And I think we need to re-examine that round and sort of look at who really won that round. But this fight was close. I'm definitely not upset with the draw. I think the draw is probably accurate to what this fight kind of was in terms of the grand scheme of, the ebbs and flows of the fight and who sort of won the metaphysical fight, so to speak. But definitely interested about what Badou Jack comes back after this, because I think he must watch the tape and go, I could have won this. Same with Joseph Diaz. Joseph Diaz should go back and watch the tape and go, I could have done X, Y, and Z better, and if I'd done it in these 4 rounds or these 3 rounds, I would have easily had a decision, and it was available. It wasn't like either Gary Russell or Adonis was, completely dominating him. No, there was enough swing rounds where definitely I think Badou could have upped the tempo and sort of steal the rounds and maybe steal a decision. I think he definitely could have done that. In a rematch, I'm probably picking Badou again because the power of Adonis was, I'm not going to say not there, but definitely it wasn't this otherworldly knockout power that we've seen. And Badou hurt Adonis a few times, I would say. So definitely something to think about. Definitely a fight that I think, unfortunately, because of the draw, will sort of get forgotten because in most fights that are draws are not remembered in a positive light, just the way it is, unfortunately. But it is what it is. Shout out to Adonis Stevenson, Badou Jack, Gary Russell Jr., Joseph Diaz, Lee Selby, Josh Warrington, all, how many guys is that? 6? Yeah, 6 guys put on just, I think, pretty high level and entertaining scraps this weekend that, even though guys, hateable guys, not hateable, guys that are haters like Ness can hate on. I think these fights were pretty decent. Now, moving over to your Patreon questions and topics, which I always am the biggest fan of. This is what SHC is all about. You guys' questions and topics about what you guys want to be discussed. Ryan Dempsey, shout out to Dempsey, man. Just a pound-for-pound supporter. Just got to say that. Now that Canelo is submitting himself to year-round VADA testing, do you feel that we are more than likely going to see Canelo Triple G2 in Vegas for September? Yes, I mean, absolutely. And I feel, even though Triple G is sort of went on his high horse and his metaphorical soapbox, and talk about, I don't want this fight, blah blah blah. Same reasons why Wilder wanted to fight Lucha Tees on principle. I get it. I still think it's bullshit. You go after the biggest money, the biggest prize fight available, and that is Canelo. And I think to leave that rivalry, that saga as a draw, it would be so underserving of either guy's legacy, in my opinion, and to not run it back as fast as possible definitely would be a huge concern for me, just on the legacy of this saga and these two and their combined story with each other. But I do think, like you said, Dempsey, that the year-round VADA testing is definitely going to make this fight much easier to make done and negotiate as such. Moving on to your second question, Dempsey. Also, Earl Spence is apparently selling tickets in Texas. So it sold over 10,000, I believe, for his hometown title defense against Ocampo. Are you having thoughts about going to cover this fight or another camp life? I feel like you're trolling me there, Dempsey. Just for that. I have said 6 months ago, maybe like a month ago, but however long ago it was, I have said a while ago I would be okay with going. And Nestor Gibbs over here just dropping the ball as usual. So, I mean,
you can't handle the truth.
I'm just saying. Ness, you can't handle the truth. It's on you, man. I'm down to go. Next question from Dempsey saying, if Canelo Triple G2 were not to happen this year, it will. And Wilder Joshua were not to happen, hypothetically speaking, this year, we still don't know yet. Which fights replace those fights for biggest fight of 2018? So, theoretically, fights that could get made if those two aren't made. What could replace it? Oh, my God. Not much. It's really that or bust. There are fights within the boxing world that would bring up interest, obviously. Like, if Triple G Saunders happened, I think a lot of people would be hyped about that within the boxing world. I think that's a realistic fight. Fights like Lomachenko, Gervonta Davis will obviously, I think, drum up some casual interest. Obviously, I just don't think it's realistic. Though I think that should be in the equation, so to speak. Man, I don't know what would really replace it. Nothing would. I would argue that if those two fights do not happen this year, that this year is left without its marquee fight, its marquee matchup that we can go back and say this is the fight that personified the year. Think about last year was such a great year, and think about the greatest fight in boxing that happened last year, Canelo Triple G. Think about that. Was Vladimir Klitschko Anthony Joshua that year? No. Yes, it was. Klitschko Joshua. Another fight that sort of was a marquee matchup of the year that personified the year. So if we don't have fights like that this year, then I definitely think 2018 would be at a very unfortunate point in boxing, just in terms of having fights that can drum up casual interest. I don't think there's much out there, to be honest. Not at all. Especially on the scale that those two would definitely bring. Fugatti has a question, but I'm going to leave that for the end because it's not boxing related. You're welcome, Rob. Robbie, a.k.a. Robbie Hearn, a.k.a. UK Rob, a.k.a. One Line Rob. Name the best fights to make across most of the divisions. Thank you for being very ambiguous about name the best fights. So that means multiple fights for most of the divisions. I'm going to do one fight for some of the divisions. How about that? A little compromise, huh? Heavyweight, best fight obviously is Joshua Wilder. But just for argument's sake, I won't mention that, just to make you happy. Wilder, Dylan White, easily. And then if Joshua's not fighting, it's Jarrett Miller. Like, those are the two most interesting matchups besides the marquee matchup of that division is AJ Miller, Wilder, White. Light heavyweight, and obviously cruiserweight has the fight we want, Usyk versus Gassiev. So I'm good with that. Cruiserweight's doing it. Light heavyweight, the winner of Sergey Kovalev versus Ediler Alvarez fighting Adonis Stevenson. I would definitely be hyped about that. One of the best fights. Badou Jack versus Gilberto Ramirez. Interesting. Just point out that. Oh no, is Gilberto at one? Hold on. Is Gilberto 168 or 175? I forget. Anyways, digressing. Triple G Canelo, Triple G Saunders, Canelo Jamal Charlo. That's one of the best fights in the division, I think. That would be highly interesting to see. Charlo Jacobs. I mean, there's a ton of fights in that division. Welterweight, Terrence Crawford against anyone in the top four of the division, a.k.a. Garcia, Porter, Thurman, Spence, any of those matchups in conjunction with each other. And Lomachenko, Robert Easter. I think it's a very interesting fight. Obviously, Lomachenko, Mikey. I mean, just those fights. I mean, the fights that we all know that would be the best fights. Best fight you have watched live on TV or at the fight itself. Wow. Best fight I've ever watched live on TV. Let me think. Hold on. Let me think about that one. I mean, there's a ton. That's the thing. There's been a ton of fights I've seen live on TV. Throwback fight, obviously. I'm gonna throw in Diego Corrales versus Luis Castillo. Thought that was a fantastic fight. I remember seeing that live. Was that ESPN or HBO? I think that was HBO. No, that might have been show. No, I forget. I think that was HBO. But digressing. More recent, AJ Klitschko. I would say that was one of the best fights I've seen in recent memory. Is AJ Klitschko. Definitely, I would say that. Live in person, I've seen some pretty good live fights. A lot of them are undercard fights that I can't remember the complete names, but I can remember tons of there's some undercard fights on the Timothy Bradley, Jesse Vargas card that went to live at the Step Hub that were phenomenal. Roman Gonzalez versus Carlos Cuadras. That was an amazing fight live at the Forum in LA. You have is it Nicaraguan? No, where's Roman Gonzalez from? Is he Panamanian? I forget. But yeah, those two countries obviously and Mexico from Carlos Cuadras going at it. That was insane in my opinion. I've been to some really good UFC fights too, but I'm not going to mention them, Rob, just to make you happy. Best ring walk ever. For you, I think you meant, do you like the UK big ring walks a la AJ, or do you think it's too WWE? I have no issue with the theatrics of the sport. I know some people do. I have never cared about it, and I would argue that I encourage it. I think it's better for the sport overall to have the theater of a boxing event. Best walk though is obviously Prince Nassim, man. It's in my intro. That Michael Jackson one will always live in infamy. Come on, fam. There's nothing that can ever top my boy Prince Nassim. Just saying. Rob again saying, as it's looking more likely that Mikey signs with Matchroom, who do you see as the next big name Eddie has/will target? I'm gonna change your question a little bit, Rob, just to make it more interesting. Which ones will he successfully get? I'm gonna put that in there because I think Eddie will successfully get Mikey. I think that will happen. So who will he next successfully get? I think it's going to be under the Heyman umbrella in terms of big name. Like, he might get some smaller names that we aren't super interested in, but in terms of relevant top names in boxing, I think, I don't know. I think maybe, like, you could see a Terrence Crawford jumping ship. I wouldn't be shocked. I don't know what his deal is like with Top Rank, but that's always been rumored that he wants to leave. So that's a possibility, and that's a huge name. That would make some noise in the boxing. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. I think that's a realistic one to go after. Heyman, I don't know. Like, it would be guys like a James DeGale. I could see Eddie snatching back James DeGale, even though I know they have some issues, and him being a DAZN. I can definitely see that. Maybe the Durrell brothers, guys of that ilk, and Ishii Smith maybe. Guys that are maybe closer to the end of their careers that want a few big paychecks before they're done. Oh my goodness, excuse me. Eric Cruz saying, I have no boxing questions today, Matt. You have answered all of them in the past, just stopping by to say hi. Thank you, Eric. Rick saying, will the Charlo brothers ever meet in weight and fight each other? If they do, how bad does Jamal beat Jamel or vice versa? They will never fight each other. I think Jamal beats Jamel, but not badly, if they were. I think the fight would bring huge viewers numbers and be a very lucrative. Sure, it would be. It's not happening. Master Westman, interesting name. New face around Patreon, like it. Can you talk about any news on Chocolatito and what his future might hold? I just want to say this. Shout out to that very hipster question. I've been hearing that he's been changing trainers. I believe, what was it? He had some health issues a little bit, but he's been rumored to be trying to get a matchup for a while. I don't know what's next and what's set in stone, if there's anything set in stone. But yes, that's basically it. Eric Cruz in the live YouTube chat saying, I agree. Badou probably wins the rematch. And then he says, Loma Mikey, Spence versus Garcia. Cruz, you mean big fights in the division, lucrative fights, best fights in boxing that can be made? Let me know what you meant in context to those questions. But that's it right now for all of your Patreon questions on the topic page. Just want to say shout out to all of you. Thank you very much. For you guys. I know it's been quick. I know it's a quick one. I'm sorry. But to be fair, you guys didn't write too many topics or questions down. But hope you guys enjoyed this little tiny standing 8-count edition of The Boxing Voice. Hit that like button even though it's on Patreon. Leave a comment below. Engagement on Patreon is always what we desire the most. So, if you have a comment, leave it on the Patreon comment section, not the YouTube comment section. And what else? Any sort of clerical stuff I need to bring up. Ness is out of town. I don't know how long. I will be trying to provide content this week. I don't know how much content I can deliver, but I will try my best. What else? Obviously, thank you. Shout out to everyone that's joined up in the recent months to help us out. Whether it was for the copyright issue, whether it was just because you're a fan of the show and you want to help out. Thank you. Always appreciate it. And yeah, be back later. Case, find me at Matt Hunter TBV on all platforms, Twitter, Instagram. Have a good Sunday and see you back tomorrow.